When you think of iconic X-Men, the usual kinda comes to mind naturally. Gambit, Cyclops, Storm, Wolverine, Colossus, maybe not Colossus. But there's one character that, despite being constantly a part of the team, appearing in multiple adaptations, and appeared from the very beginning, tends to fall under the radar more often than not. That character is who I would call Beast. Someone often described as just another know-it-all, but once you peel those layers, you get one of the most fun Avengers put on paper. Oh, you think I was referring to him as an X-Men? Well, we'll get into it. Hello and welcome to another part in my series where I talk about each and every single X-Men, and today we'll be talking about the buzzball Beast and how he went from the lovable yet intelligent bud to a war criminal. Unlike most mutants, Henry Hank McCoy was born with his gift fully developed, and large feet and hands that gave him full dexterity with each limb. These would also give him super strength and durability. On top of that, super intelligence. What I think is so interesting, unlike any other mutant from the original 5, was that he was born with his X gene unlocked. They had a semblance of a life living outside of being a mutant. While for Hank, he never knew what it was like not being a mutant, what it was like to be normal. Despite his outward mutant appearance, he wasn't asocial or wasn't afraid to come off as goofy or weird, quoting Shakespeare with his peers. He was something far worse than a mutant. By God, he was a theater kid. He wasn't just smart and social, but also an athlete, being an all-star football player, giving him a full ride to Bard University. Now, he didn't pick up any subclasses or magical secrets, but he did get not only 6 PhDs, but also would meet the worst guy any mutant could meet, Charles Xavier, and soon would join the X-Men as a founding member. But you might notice something. Beast really isn't all that Beast-like or blue at all. Oh, okay. Beast was actually the first member to leave the X-Men trying to find a cure for his X gene, which I find interesting. Having to face discrimination and vitriol all your life, of course, one would want to find a way to circumvent this. To take into consideration Xavier's ideals of integration and how much he focuses on masking their gifts for the rest of humanity probably helped foster this feeling of self-hatred for his mutation in Hank McCoy. Ironically enough, making his mutation more prominent by giving him a thick blue fur coat. But soon after becoming blue, he would join the Avengers after graduating from the X-Men in Avengers 137 as a provisional member. Not to say that he forgot his ties, as there were times where he would take a small leave to help his mutant brothers out, but in general, until his departure, he would build a genuine connection with the Avengers who, regardless of him being a mutant, they took him in with open arms. You know, for them, at this point, the bar was set pretty low by Bruce Banner. Now, I know X-Men fans tend to hate when their characters leave for other groups. They don't like it when other people play with their toys, but with the X-Men, their whole goal is to be accepted and integrated into society. So it would make sense for other teams to take them in, not segregate it purely to the X-Men and allow them to spread their wings. Plus, to be entirely honest with you, I think here's a massive reason why Beast, out of the original 5, has been able to stay somewhat relevant. With characters like Jean and Scott, they were foundational members of the X-Men, the closest you got to main characters, so they were able to stick around without having much crossover with other books. While for characters like Warren and Bobby, their failure to really expand much outside the X-Men started the downfall of their popularity, especially by the time of Giant Size. They were kind of overshadowed within their own team, while for Beast, I think it's the reason I kind of glance over his time in the X-Men, is that a lot of the characterization we know Beast for stems from the Avengers more so than the X-Men. He was allowed to be this quick-witted goofball, the heart of the team, but known for his intelligence, none of which highlights this more than his relationship with Wonder Man. A really smart blue guy being friends with a fame-hungry superhero. Where have I seen this before? The free-spirited Beast and the more mild-mannered Simon would bounce off each other and go from bar to bar, blind dates, and even poking fun at one another, as in Avengers 194, where Simon returns to the Avengers from Los Angeles and explains to them while he was away he was a part-time cable star, and just finished taping his first episode, where he plays the character Mr. Muscles, and gets pushed around as the butt of the joke, and Beast can't help himself from laughing at Simon's sheer embarrassment. I think why the relationship works so well is that Beast is a part of a team who's filled to the brim with already super geniuses. So a way to differentiate him from the others is to give him this unique dynamic. The super intelligent Beast is able to break down the guilt-ridden Simon out of his shell by dragging him out. I say guilt-ridden because in Wonder Man's first appearance in Avengers 9, he would actually betray the Avengers as a double agent for Baron Zemo, but after the fact would almost sacrifice himself for the team, though even after coming back and joining the Avengers officially, he still felt that he didn't deserve to walk through those doors after all he's done. But Hank was always there to remind him that he had a friend in him. Look, he even gave him a little nickname with 1D. This is kinda why I always hated the notion that the X-Men is found family, while the Avengers are merely co-workers. When we look at Beast, a member of both, having a hell of a lot better of a time with Wonder Man than his childhood friends. Look at Beast with the Avengers, a full head of hair, a beautiful smile, tons of friends, and then you look at his time with the X-Men and he's at a Norwood 5. Now, I know they call it bromance and not romance for a reason, and I understand men can have a deep connection with one another without it being romantic, but every time these two share a panel, there's some underlining tension. I mean, in an alternate Earth from the pages of Exiles, describe how Hank and Simon were actually in a romantic relationship, and Hank loved Simon so much after his death against MODOK. Beast straight up did not want to return to his homeworld, saying that he has nothing to live for. Or how during Krakoa, when Beast was a full-on villain and was ready to drop a nuke on Earth, Wonder Man was there to convince Beast to not take the shot, and realizing that it would kill Simon, turns around, sacrificing himself. Nobody could convince him but Simon. And when that original Beast was replaced with a clone, he only had the memories of the 80s, in publication time, the peak of his life, or when that clone was deserted off of Krakoa, lived with Simon in his one-bedroom apartment. Now, this doesn't mean anything, but all I'm saying is that who am I to say that a man of science like Hank McCoy would not be into a little bit of experimenting? Plus, a self-hating gay man would probably be the funniest use of the mutant metaphor. But you didn't come for the sexual tension between a movie star and his blue bestie. Unless you did, then I apologize. Because we're here to talk about war crimes. Now, Beast wasn't always a villain, but it wasn't a sudden turn. Rather, it was kinda something that was slowly brewing. The 90s and the early 2000s had this weird fascination of making the X-Men more morally gray. Think Scott, I'm not Polly, I just like to cheat, Summer, and Xavier hiding the fact there was another X-Men team who was sent out to Krakoa and died. Beast was no different. Take when the legacy virus was going around, a viroid created by the villain Strife, a terrorist from the same future as Cable. It was originally made by Apocalypse to kill any non-mutant, but was changed by Strife to kill any mutant. Characters like Pyro and even Magic falling victim to it. Not great. So every mutant scientist was desperately trying to find a cure, including Hank. While during a desperate time, made a desperate call as he would enlist the help of everyone's favorite eugenist, Mr. Sinister. Now, there's this mutant by the name of Melody Jacobs, who had the power of absorbing energy from people dying around her. She couldn't control it, sapping people around her in a similar vein to Rogue. But when you have a plague that's going around killing people en masse, it makes a horrible mutation into a pretty useful one. Now, shortly after rescuing Melody Jacobs, the villain Mr. Sinister would make his appearance and try kidnapping her. But instead of by force, he convinces her to willingly join him. While every other X-Men was trying to stop this, Hank admitted that Mr. Sinister had the best chances of actually helping Melody Jacobs and let her make the choice for her own. Now, a lot of people pinpoint this moment as when Hank started to become more, dare I say, sinister, but really, when looking deeper into the context, Melody Jacobs was an adult and could make her own choices and agreed to go. It wasn't like Hank just dropped her off on Mr. Sinister's doorstep. Despite Sinister's ulterior motives, he did help find the cure to both the legacy virus and Jacob's mutation. So it's really hard for me to blame Hank McCoy for that. Really, it's more so a really shit situation that had a really shit solution. Now, what I can blame Beast for is how he treated the legacy virus afterwards, because during the Skrull invasion on Earth, Scott turned to Beast and asked him, "Hey, remember that virus that wiped out thousands upon thousands of us? What if we remade that, but for the scrolls? Now you can argue that Scott is equally at fault for asking him to do this in the first place, but also Hank is a grown man. He could have seen the ramifications of what he was doing. But speaking of high horses, what about that time during the end of the Second Coming storyline where Nightcrawler sacrificed his life to save the mutant messiah, Hope Summers, when Cyclops was trying to bury his friend, Beast would rush in and say, this is your fault, Scott. And all Scott really could muster was, yeah, man, thanks for showing up. I'm sure Kurt would have loved you coming. But high horses only get higher because during All New X-Men, Hank brought the teenage X-Men to the present day to show Scott the error of his ways, as Scott was becoming more and more extreme as the Revolutionary, believing that the original team's ideals could save the future. Man, Beast, Cyclops is really taking the extreme route. Let me just break space and time by having the original Scott almost die and having the Revolutionary phase out of existence for a couple seconds. Really, a splendid job. And let me save you some trouble. Hank is just as much reckless, if not more than Scott, because he did all of this to really get proven wrong, and it only got worse in his biggest fumble, Krakoa. Now at worst, Hank was kind of an ass. A reckless ass, but well-intentioned? But oh god, when Krakoa rolled around, even the most staunch of Hank McCoy defenders couldn't really muster up a solid defense for the guy. This was full-blown character assassination central for him. Call back to the very beginning after House of X, when Krakoa first formed, and while everyone was proposing ideas that Krakoa should run completely atypical than a standard human society, education, love, religion, completely rebuilt from the ground up for mutants by mutants. All Hank's very bright idea was recreating the fucking CIA, where one of the very first things he did was drop a bioweapon on a country in South America who was making magical plant tech, a direct competitor to Krakoa's whole shtick. And after being confronted by Jean Grey, he could really only say, well, it was a miscommunication, what can you do? A fantastic start to a whole new era. Or how about when just on his own volition and unrelated to X-Force, he just started running his own prison in outer space, running experiments on said prisoners under the belief that he was ensuring the safety of mutants. But his greatest experiment would be on his fellow X-Force teammate Wolverine, where he would kill, revive, torture on repeat until Wolverine was the basis for his mindless army of clones. The only other person who really rivaled how awful he was probably Mr. Sinister, because at least Hank didn't cause an actual bad ending to happen. Now, Beast's reign would end near the end of Krakoa itself with his aforementioned sacrifice. Going back to this moment that I mentioned earlier, I think this works as an ending to his character arc in Krakoa, is that it ties back to both his time as an Avenger, the X-Men, and his best friend Wonder Man. You have to remember, Wonder Man had his own villainous streak from his first appearance, and after years of trying to seek redemption, never felt it was enough. But who was always there to extend a hand to help him out? Hank McCoy. So seeing his friend, who was always in his corner, going through a similar dark period, he extended his hand when everyone else thought he was a lost cause, offering the same generosity his friend showed him. His final thoughts were spent saving his best friend's life from his own destruction. A perfect ending to his character arc in Krakoa. Pretty messy one, but a conclusion at least. Well, yeah. As of recording this video, the Beast clone from the ending of X-Force is now the main Beast, which is all fine and dandy, as much as I don't like the literal reset button on a character's development, even if I don't like what they've done. But then it was revealed after Age of Revelation that the old Beast is still kicking, just as evil as ever, and is going to drop a mutant bomb that will turn everyone into a mutant. I think my main issue with Beast's modern incarnation is that it's just boring and strips everything away that was him in the first place. In Avengers, he was this fun-loving goofball, and while on the X-Men, they completely removed that part of his character in favor of making him this morally dubious guy willing to do anything for the bigger picture, when in reality, we have so many mutants that already filled that role. It doesn't make him complex, but rather it makes him ineffective to actually make me feel anything while reading. In fact, we already had a Beast just like that, with Dark Beast from the Age of Apocalypse, a mad scientist that would run horrific experiments not only on others but himself, someone who wasn't taught the ideals of Charles Xavier and seemingly fell into the darkest impulses, throwing away any moral boundaries that once restricted him. And while you might say that evil variants of already established heroes is nothing new, why would this be anything noteworthy? The problem is that he's constantly bent in 616 as a foil to not only the X-Men but Beast himself, there's already a Beast that fills his role. By making Beast evil, he literally has no identity. Do you see the problem with this? It doesn't help that Jet is trying to have his cake and eat it by just having both the good Beast and the bad Beast. There's really no consequences to what Beast did in Krakoa. I think if you really wanted to pitch this idea of Hank being evil, I think instead of going against the X-Men, maybe, just maybe, you can throw him against the Avengers instead. We've already seen what Beast has done if he went against the X-Men, but if you were to go up against the people he bonded with the most, the Avengers, it would actually cause for interesting conflict and solidify him as an actual villain across Marvel, not just with the X-Men, in a similar vein to his earlier appearances with the Avengers. It could run parallel to his previous incarnation. By only having him show up in X-Men books as a villain only hinders his ceiling as one. If he actually got a chance to fight the Avengers, imagine their reaction to seeing their former teammate take such a sudden turn. Someone who they consider family just as much if not more than the X-Men did for him. It would cause for actually, drama. Tension in my comic book? Why, I would never. I mean, Jed MacKay was writing for both the Avengers and the X-Men at the same time. It isn't impossible to see this happen. But again, this is only to be married to this vain idea that Beast would be a villain. In the vast sea of intelligent characters who are morally great with ambitions of peace way beyond your moral compass, he just kind of gets lost in all of that. And for someone who was both an Avenger, a founding member of the X-Men, and an iconic character like Beast deserves so much better. I'm no longer blue now.